For decades, Sweden and Finland resisted joining the Western alliance NATO. Finland, which shares the longest EU border with Russia, specifically avoided antagonizing its much bigger neighbor throughout the Cold War. But now that calculus seems to be shifting for the Scandinavian countries as Russia's attack on Ukraine enters its 8th week. Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin says a decision will be made on whether her country will join NATO in the coming weeks. She made the remarks while standing alongside Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Adersson, who said Sweden was re-examining its long-held position to stay out of NATO's security umbrella. Polls in both countries have shown growing public support for joining the military alliance. Russia, for its part, has given stern warnings about how it would respond to such an expansion, including threats to deploy nuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles to its European enclave. And to discuss what impact NATO's expansion could mean for Europe's security, joining me now from Istanbul is Talha Köse. He is the Brussels coordinator for SETA, a policy and security think tank. And from Oslo, Karsten Friis, he heads the Security and Defense Group at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Karsten, what would the process of Finland and Sweden joining NATO actually look like, and how soon you think this could happen?
Well, first of all, politically, they will have to agree among the political parties that they actually want to apply. And that is what's happening right now. There's in both countries an ongoing process within the parliaments as to how they want to go about doing it, or if they want to apply at all. And then I believe it's sent over to executives. That means the government president to actually, submit the application. But I think both will submit the applications before the NATO summit, which will be in June.
So Talha, how significant is this move by Finland and Sweden in terms of changing Europe's long-term security arrangements? I mean, how has Russia's attack on Ukraine changed Europe's security landscape?
I think it's very important because one of the reasons why Russian side decided to invade Ukraine is that Ukraine indicated their interest to join NATO membership. So, but after this event and after the ongoing Russian attacks on Georgia and Crimea, other European member countries like Finland and Sweden understood that this current situation in Ukraine may have impact for the broader security of Europe. So it is related to security architecture of Europe. And it seems that this current situation, current crisis has potential to continue even after Ukraine operation. So I think once they understood that this Ukraine invasion has a broader ramifications, I think they are more interested to be part of the NATO.
So, Karsten, how has the Ukraine crisis changed people's mindset in Finland and Sweden, also in Sweden? Has it pushed them to rethink their decades-old belief that peace was best kept by not publicly picking sides?
Absolutely. There's been a profound change in public opinion in Sweden and Finland. Much more now is a clear majority in both countries, especially in Finland, but both countries supporting NATO membership. And they have seen clearly there's a difference between partnership and membership in NATO. So that it's,
Go on, please.
No, so that's the main reason here. And it's, of course, it's a bit ironic from a Russian point of view, because it kind of backfires strategically. If it's true that they are concerned about NATO enlargement, well, this is what will happen when you go to invade another country.
So, Talha, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that if Finland and Sweden entered NATO, Russia would have to rebalance the situation with its own measures, warning of severe consequences. What would those consequences be?
I think the Baltic region used to be nuclear-free, and the signal, I think, is nuclearization of the Baltic region, maybe one of the consequences. An expansion of military equipment, military presence, Russian military presence in the Baltic region, closer to those areas. And I think this may also increase some arms race in that region. So there may be tensions in the Nordic and Arctic as well. So it seems, but the most significant consequence probably will be some nuclearization of the Baltic region.
Karsten, many in the US and Europe have argued that NATO's expansion is provoking Russia. Would Sweden and Finland's membership into NATO strengthen the alliance deterrence or make Russians more aggressive? And is there a real risk for the alliance?
Well, there's little doubt that it will strengthen NATO, of course, in collective defense. But from a military point of view, Sweden and Finland do not represent any threat whatsoever towards Russia, neither politically nor militarily. So that it doesn't have to, increase tensions at all. That's up to Russia really to how they want to interpret it. It's also possible for these countries to choose a careful NATO approach like Norway has. So, like, we don't have nuclear weapons on our territory, and we have a basing policy which is careful. So they can take some cautionary measures, even if they're members, to ease potential concerns from Moscow.
So Talha, Finland shares a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. If it becomes a member, it would mean that Russia will have an additional border with NATO on its northern flank. What is your take on that? And is Russia's attack on Ukraine a strategic blunder?
I think Russia made a huge mistake. NATO was already weak, and there was a limited joint threat perception. So with the Ukraine invasion, I think the threat perception in Europe has increased, and I think this will strengthen NATO in the coming months. Mm-hmm. So for Finland, I mean, it's a country with 5.5 million population and which doesn't have huge military potential, although they have capacity and interoperability with NATO. I think it's not a big military power. But for Russia, in any case, they will have an additional border with NATO, and they have to increase their costs. I think the cost will be higher for Finland, but for Russian side, they already have been overstretched in other areas. I think this will have a larger cost for Russia.
So, Karsten, would you agree? And are Finland and Sweden fit for NATO membership? How prepared are these countries militarily to join the alliance?
Oh, I think from a military point of view, they could join tomorrow. They have been operating with NATO since the Balkans, in Afghanistan, even in Libya. So that's not the problem at all. It's more about getting them into the NATO planning, the defense planning process, and of course the political process of getting them in. But they will contribute. Finland is buying F-35s. Sweden have also very capable equipment. It will reinforce Northern Europe's security significantly. So it will be very good for Norway and also for Northern Europe. I think it will contribute to stability.
So Talha, how do you think Turkey would be reacting to both countries as membership? Because Finland and Sweden are among some European countries that have halted or restricted arms export license approvals for Turkey. How is that going to play out moving forward?
I mean, Turkey has a set of issues with those countries, especially with Sweden, and they have some relations with the PKK and the Syrian branch of PKK. So this is an issue of concern. But other than that, they have experienced joint NATO peacekeeping, peace operations. So in that regard, they will not have significant problem. But at the political landscape, there are certain issues those both Turkish and Finnish and governments do not agree. So I think this will bring a minor issue.
So Karsten, do you believe this is a minor issue? Because we know that Stockholm is supporting the terror organization, the YPG in northern Syria. Could Stockholm's membership to NATO help hammer out these differences between the two countries?
Well, my reading of European, let's say, atmosphere these days, political level, is that it's one about unity and standing together. Mm-hmm. And as my colleague said, there's a shared threat perception now, which kind of trumps everything else. And so I don't think I don't think anyone wants to stop Sweden and Finnish NATO membership if they actually apply. That's too politically costly. So I think this will happen. It will not be stopped, and then they can smooth out disagreements like other NATO countries do already. In the back room, so to speak.
So Finland says Talhai would aim to continue to maintain functioning relations with Russia in the event it becomes a NATO member. Is this viable?
I think it's viable. I mean, they can manage their relations, but after the problem is that we don't exactly know how long this Ukraine operation will continue and what will be the consequences of this operation. So if we end up with a very destructive and prolonged, confrontation war in Ukraine, I think the relations between Finland and Russia will also be damaged. So it all depends on how the Ukraine war will end up.
So, Carsten, it seems like accession negotiations will be expedited due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. And Ukraine has been bidding for NATO membership for years. And with this latest conflict, Kiev's aspirations seem to be less likely. Could you talk to us about how Finland and Sweden's membership prospects are different than that of Ukraine's? Is there a double standard here?
No, it's not a double standard because the door is in principle open. But I mean, it is true that these countries, they are at peace. They don't have any political or military conflict with any of the other countries. So it's not kind of, it doesn't bring NATO into conflict. NATO countries have said for all the time that they don't want to bring members in that have outstanding or either are in conflict. So politically speaking, it's much more difficult to bring in Georgia and Ukraine. So that's a kind of realpolitik, if you like, dimension to it. But Sweden and Finland has never been part of the Soviet Union, doesn't belong to some kind of this nationalist idea that Putin is talking about. They don't belong to that sphere at all. So I think it's a rather different case.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.